I mean, if you think about the early forefathers of the free market, John Locke and Adam Smith, many of the ideas that they put forward were basically had no concept of what actually became of the ideas. And I'm not necessarily defending John Locke and Adam Smith. I think at that point in time, a lot of their rationality based on what they understood was actually quite concrete. But they never anticipated people making money off of money. They never anticipated a world where the highest paying job you can possibly have is to be a hedge fund manager, where you make on average about $230 million a year doing what? You're not really investing in corporations. You're moving money around, making money off of money, using derivatives, interest margin, and it's just this absolutely comedically pointless activity when it comes to actually creation, when it comes to providing something as a service, as opposed to simply getting money so you can live and live in whatever lifestyle that you like, which is utterly self-serving and, again, does nothing. So I'm always a little embarrassed to bring that up to people, but I am not embarrassed on the other side because I'm a victim of culture just like anyone else. I've been doing things to try and survive. I have plenty of things in my past I've done to make money that I was never proud of. I've done outrageous amounts of submission and servitude, and then I tried to settle on this equity thing. And now most of my income is generated from freelance stuff I do. I've got a change that comes from the DVDs that I do, and that's about it. You know, I have savings from all the work that I've done, both in trading and in my freelance work. But yeah, that's really where I am today. So, but back to the trading point. Ultimately, it's an interesting art form if you know how to engage in short-term pattern trading. I don't know, are you familiar at all with that? I don't want to sidetrack us.
I know
it's very, very different.
Yeah, I just wondered because did you trade like Forex or something? Is that what you did, or something along that line?
No, I was never a currency trader. I traded extremely high volume NASDAQ stocks, essentially that have a great turnover, large floats. And basically, you're scalping, meaning you're getting in and out really fast on high size. Okay. Again, an utterly pointless exercise. So, you short something, an X amount of shares. You wait for it to make one single impulse move, and then you're out immediately. Okay. And that's basically what happens. It's hard for me to describe it anymore directly that. But the holding period is very, very short. In fact, certain instances, my average holding period would be more like 8 or 9 minutes. So it's very quick. Right. Anyway.
Well, Roxanne always
it's a whole different little annoying.
Yeah.
What's that?
Roxanne always talks about her and Jacques when they have tours here. She shows them, they'll show a bit of the artwork that Roxanne did for, real estate, and Roxanne always says, "Yeah, that's how we prostituted ourselves." So whatever you do, you have to do in this system. It's just the way it is at the moment.
And I'm glad you point that out because, as you know, we have this sort of heated, agitating community out there, and they like to poke what they think are holes in the commitment of the movement and the project. And they say, "Oh, well, people are selling things. They're selling things." Well, what else can we do? You either can sell yourself as a prostitute in your services, or you can make something and sell it, which is essentially another form of prostitution service. And it's probably best that people like Jacques and Roxanne, of course, sell things that are actually tangible and relevant. And I just want to reiterate that because it's a reoccurring thing. People say, "Ooh, they're selling things. That must be bad." Well, we're not exploiting people. We're not exploiting and manipulating people. We're selling things that actually have a service. So I just want to... that noise continues to happen. I'm sure you hear that fairly frequently. Oh, yeah, I know Roxanne even has an auto response she uses for people that send emails about, you guys are against the monetary system, but you're selling things. Well, what else do you recommend? That we all get the wait tables? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
it's very frustrating. And I can't really think about much else until I get some of these pre-production things I have coming up very soon in order. But yeah, there's a box CD out there, and there's the film music, which will eventually come out for download. So if people want to get it, they can get it. I know a lot of people like the music from the films, which I did too. I slaved over that music as a composer. But anyway.
Yeah, great. Well, so speaking of the next film, got any timeline on that? We won't hold you to it.
What? Thanks. Yeah. Well, the end of the year. The goal is before the end of the year. I was supposed to be October Obviously, that's a big challenge. Trying not to have to rush anything. Addendum was extremely rushed because I was meeting a deadline for a film festival. But this one has to be right. This one's far more complex, far more dramatic elements, far more difficult animations that I've had to hire a tremendous number of people to take out, both in 3D and 2D. A lot of hand-drawn stuff. Got a great opening scene with Jacques. I think you might have remembered when I was there doing a little bit of that. But yeah, it's tricky. The thing about this film now is that it's getting too big. The opening section, which was supposed to be relatively small, is now really grown. But the information is so important that I think I might end up with a film that's essentially 3 hours long, because I don't want to cram it in there so it's overbearing, and I have to give it a directorial space, but simultaneously it's all within the same context. So I pondered making 2 films out of it, but I think I can condense it down. Worst case scenario will end up being 2 films released simultaneously. But as of now, I'm looking for one decent long film. I'm trying my best to keep it under 3 hours because I know people don't like to sit that long. But it's also going to be a very, again, dramatic film in the way I've used creative attributes. Both films have heavy gestural stuff, which I leave in deliberately. I pursue deliberately because I like to kind of get a sense of the projections that people have regarding certain gestures. Meaning that ambiguity can be a powerful creative art form. Granted, almost everything is ambiguous on a certain level with semantics and stuff, but the visual elements and the stuff I do in gesture, I've learned a lot about how that tends to relate to at least certain cultures, and I really love generating a certain degree of ambiguity to keep people a little bit on the edge, to keep people wondering, a little mystery. So I won't belabor it, but I have these really wonderful scenes that I'm very proud of that I'm working in composite to put together, and I think everyone's going to be interestingly surprised at the way the work ends, so
right.
I won't give it away.
That sounds great. Well, so,
But I'm very happy with it.
Can you share some ideas about the technical side of things, the challenges that you've met along the way with developing your films, your concepts?
Well, technically speaking, I have a great deal of experience in editing and compositing and some animation, and of course music-related stuff. Once you kind of know the basics of how to move around these programs and you get some experience, it really comes down to just having a sense of external perception where whatever you're creating, you can kind of you can assess an average of the way that will be experienced. And that's why I bring up prior the ambiguity attribute, which I have concurrent in all films. Even though I'm very direct, of course, obviously with Addendum, it's going to be very, very direct. But then there's elements like Jiddu Krishnamurti, and then, of course, in Zeitgeist 1, there was Trungpa Rinpoche. And I'm trying to create a cross-cultural kind of feel. So it really depends on what your target is, in other words. Generally speaking, whenever I talk to people that are aspiring into any type of art form, I say, do whatever you think you want to do, whatever you think is right, and don't consider, and this is kind of a beginner's disposition, because the worst thing you can do to create anything is to be inhibited. I've experienced this countless times with people, friends of mine, that they go out and they try to make a film to sell it. And I tend to find that those that really try to work the commercial angle for money, they tend to fail, because they're trying too hard. And what really happens is that those works that stand out are really ones that are personal to the creator. So that's really the most important thing. So if you have the skill set to pursue these programs and to shoot footage and everything else, and that's all easily learnable, the next goal is just to figure out how to create the expression that you want, that you're comfortable with, and to not let anyone tell you otherwise. Now, obviously, you can assess that expression based on the general communicative properties and how it would relate to different cultures. In other words, if you're going to throw in really heavy rhetoric that might be offensive, you need to consider the ramifications of that. But simultaneously, you just really need to pay attention to what you think is important to express. So I just want to reiterate that. That's the best advice I would give, ultimately. I can say a lot of different things, but I don't want to belabor anything. But my advice is do what you think is correct. And that goes for everything. That goes for learning to play music or composing music. I grew up in a heavy, indoctrinated musical culture where everyone was trying to imitate and get into certain forms. You had the serial forms and the old classical forms, and everyone tried to put themselves into a little pocket.